So in Matthew chapter 14, from verse 15, the Bible says, when it was evening, his disciples came to him, saying, this is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves food. But Jesus said to them, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. Now I want you to pause a little bit here. I want you to see what was happening. Jesus had just finished a mega crusade, and the people had been with him for days. Mighty things had happened. And you know that the what Jesus did on earth here was done as an expression of God's will, because Jesus himself was the perfect expression of God's will on earth here. So at the end of the whole meeting, Jesus was thinking of feeding the people because it was time. And then he said, his disciples were like, send the multitudes away. Let them go and buy things for themselves to eat and nourish themselves. But Jesus said to them, no, these people do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. They don't need to go away. Give them something to eat. The first thing I want you to see here is that the moment Jesus told his disciples to give them something to eat, he revealed the mind of God concerning that situation. He made it abundantly clear that the will of God was for them to feed the people, and not for the people to go away and look for food somewhere on their own. Please, you must understand here that if you are to receive divine supplies, you need to know that supplies from God, apart from knowing that God is your source, it's important for you to know that supplies from God are intended for the fulfillment of his will. They are intended for the fulfillment of his will. You see, we need to come to terms with the fact that God did not place us on earth so that our wills on earth can be done in heaven. No, we are here to see to it that his will is done on earth as it is where? In heaven. So that's why we're here. So that's why it is important that we understand that God's provisions follow the vision that God gives. His provisions follow his vision. And sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that the vision that will attract divine provision is something that we on our own conjure up. That is not how it works. Sometimes we think we can sit down and dream up something big, something grand, and then expect divine supplies, expect provision and things like that. No. In other words, it was not the disciples here that decided on their own that they would feed these people. It wasn't their idea. The idea of feeding the crowd was God's idea. And God has placed us on earth to run with his own ideas, not our own. We are here to fulfill his will. That's why in John chapter 6 verse 38, Jesus said, I have come down to do the will of him who sent me. So that's why I'm here. So you must understand that the same reason Jesus came down is the same reason God left you and I here. That's the reason why we are still here. Otherwise, the day we got born again, we would have been taken away. We are here to see to it that God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Because you must remember that Jesus said, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. So we are here for his will. So the idea of feeding the multitude was God's idea, expressed clearly through Christ. They do not need to go away. Give them something to eat. So if we are to enjoy the supply that God has given us in Christ, our earnest desire must be to do his will. Our passion must be to do his will. Must be the desire of our hearts to do his will. Because his provisions are intended to sponsor his will. They are designed to sponsor his will. Give them something to eat. Give them. So whether it is your health, the reason you should make demands for healing, the reason you should make demands for divine health should not be so that your own will may be done. It should be so that God's will may be done. You must understand that healing for you is his will. Soundness of health for you is his will. And in seeking such, you should seek it as his will, not just simply your desire. So we don't seek to be healed just so that we can be comfortable, but so that his will might be done on earth as it is in heaven. We don't seek to prosper so that we may show off. No, but so that his will might be done on earth as it is in heaven. So his will. And only God can reveal his will. Only God can reveal his will. Man cannot know God's will apart from God's revealing it himself. That's why he's called Jehovah. The self-existing God, the self-revealing God, and the self-sufficient God. So he says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. In other words, I have a will, or rather, let me put it this way. My plans for you make up my will for you. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. So it should be our desire to do his will. To do his will. We must want to do it if we want to receive from him. Give them something to eat. That was God's will. And that was a divine assignment from God to the disciples. So you must ask yourself today, why am I here? What's the reason? What is my purpose on earth? What am I doing here? Why am I here? You must understand that there is a reason why you are here. And that reason, simply put, is to do the will of God. Is to do the will of God. Is to do the will of God, and by so doing, to walk in his plans for your life and fulfill his purpose for your life. So that is very important. However, we must understand that to know the will of God and to know his plans and purposes for us, to know his assignment for us, requires that we draw near to him. It requires that we be in constant fellowship with him. How was Jesus able to know that? Because you must understand that it was not on every occasion that Jesus ministered to a crowd that he fed them after the ministration. I hope you're getting my point. It wasn't on every occasion he did it. No. So how was he able to tell the difference between when he should do it and when he should not do it? The answer is simply that he had communion, unbroken fellowship with God, unbroken communion with God. And in communing with God constantly, he was able to know the mind of his Father concerning each occasion where he ministered to people. That's why he could say, it is what I see my Father do that I do. So that means Jesus was constantly on the watch to see the moves his Father was making, to see the direction his Father was going, and then he would follow suit. So in the same way, if you and I are to enjoy God's provision, if we are to enjoy his supplies, we need to fellowship with him so that we can receive his visions for our lives and know his will for us. It's very important. We need to make it a point to separate ourselves like Jesus did on a regular basis, to fellowship with him. Of course, Jesus fellowshiped with the Father even while he was doing other things. Yet, he had special times that he went away, both from his disciples and every other person, and spent time with his Father. He expects us to be like that too. And then, of course, beyond having such special times with him, we should have this ongoing communion with God, ongoing communion with him, ongoing communion with him, and fellowshipping with him through prayers and his word, so that we can discern his mind. We can discern his mind. It is highly important. So Jesus said, give them something to eat. Don't think that when Jesus said give them something to eat, he was just speaking his own ideas. No, he was speaking God's ideas. He was speaking God's mind. Give these people something to eat. Once we get a hold of God's idea, listen to me, we have something solid upon which to base our faith. Once we catch a glimpse of divine vision, we have something solid to run with. It's very important. But to catch that vision, to get the idea, is not for casual seekers. It's for serious people. Serious people who are really serious in seeking the Lord. Not for people who just, no, that's not it. So he said to them, they don't need to go away. Give them something to eat. Now look at their response. In verse 17, and they said to him, we have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, that is the reaction of the natural man. That's the reaction of the natural man. The moment Jesus said, give them something to eat, his disciples immediately looked at their account. Immediately they looked at their pockets. Immediately they looked at their reserves. But you see, when God gives us a vision, when God gives us an idea, when God reveals his will to us, he doesn't intend that the supplies for sponsoring that will come from what we think we have stored. He doesn't intend that we begin to look at our purse or begin to look at our bank balance. Those things are good, though. Don't misunderstand me. But what I'm saying is that when the moment God reveals his will, once he gives us his vision, he does not look at how much we have or how much we don't have. That's not the first thing. That's not the first thing. So naturally, the disciples looked at what they have, which is what we do instinctively in most cases. And they said, we have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, please understand this. It doesn't mean that what they had was irrelevant. It doesn't mean that what they had was useless. Because you must understand that in the first place, what they had was given to them by God. Are you getting what I'm saying? Hello? Are you following what I'm saying? What they had was given to them by God. But it was not supposed to be the object of their focus. That's what I'm saying. God gave it to them, but it was not to be the object of their focus. It was not supposed to be the first thing they would look at when God was saying, do this. It wasn't supposed to be the first thing. So we must understand that in receiving supplies from God, 1, he is our source. 2, his supplies are designed to meet his will or sponsor his will in our lives. They're designed to sponsor his will. 3, we must know also that every assignment God gives us must require his help to be fulfilled. God does not give us assignments that are equal to our natural ability to fulfill. Because you see, God will not give you something that will make his help unnecessary in your life. He will not do that. Because we were never created to be independent of him. Never. That's why the moment man declared independence in the garden, the whole world entered darkness. So you see from here that whatever assignment God is giving you is bigger than your natural ability. Is bigger than what you can do by yourself. Because if you can do it just by yourself, it will not be satisfied. You see, that's why he said in Zechariah chapter 4 verse 6. He said, this is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord Almighty. By my spirit. So in other words, if you do it by power and might, you will fail. So you see the nature of the assignment he gave these people here. He said, Go, feed them. That was what he did in the book of First Kings. When he commanded Elijah to go to a widow that was looking for food herself. He said, go, let her feed you. I have commanded her to take care of you for as long as the famine lasts. The woman was looking for food. The woman was looking for food. You see? So the assignment God gives are large. They are God-sized assignments because he expects to supply what is needed for the fulfillment of his assignment. He expects to supply it. Whether in terms of people, or in terms of resources, or in terms of finances, he is the supplier. He is the supplier. So as a business person, if you are doing business as an assignment from God, you should expect that God will supply those that will come to do business with you. God will supply your customers. God will supply the finances. That's how it's designed to be. I hope you are with me this morning. God will supply those things. That's why it is a mistake when you separate your business as a Christian from your Christian life. When you separate your career from your spiritual life. When you make your business first, make your career first, even your ministry, if you make it first, put it ahead of God, you are in error. You are in error. Why? Because he is the sole supplier. The sole supplier. You may be able to run around though and get some things by yourself by struggling and striving and but the truth is that those things will not bring you genuine fulfillment. They will not help you accomplish God's vision because only God can supply Isaac. Man can produce Ishmael. Man can't produce Isaac. So it's very important that we understand that. He is your supplier. He is your supplier. And you must understand that the assignment he has given you is bigger than your natural ability. And that is why, you see, when you understand this as a businessman, as a career person, as a student, as a pastor, whatever, calling the Lord has given you, your attitude to what God has called you to do will be different. It will be different. Completely different. So they looked at what they had, failing to understand that God did not intend that should be their focus. No. Remember, I said, what you have is very important. We shall come to that. But it shouldn't be your primary focus. I hope you are getting that. It shouldn't be your primary focus. It shouldn't be your primary focus. Your focus should be above God as your source. So when they said that, Jesus in verse 18 said something to them. He said, bring them here to me. So the next point I want you to see concerning receiving divine supplies is that you need to know, you need to identify what God has given you. Remember I said identify what God has given you, not that you should make it your primary focus. But you need to identify what God has given you. There is something that God has given you. You need to identify it. Now, why do you need to identify what God has given you? Because usually God will use what you have to produce what you need to fulfill his call on your life. You use what you have. So you need to identify what God has given you. So that's why you see here, even when they said we have only 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus said, bring them here to me. Because it was in order that they identified what they had. But it was wrong for them to make it their primary focus. So you identify what you have. And in identifying what you have, you also ensure that you don't despise what you have. You don't despise what you have. What you have may be different from what another person has because no two assignments are exactly the same. So what you have may be different, but you need to identify it, recognize it, and, appreciate it. So You identify what you have. What has God given you? What do you have at the moment? It may not look much. It may not look significant. But the truth is that if it is what you have, it is important. It is relevant.